this series of TED Talks, the second one, I listed the criteria for addiction. And one of the criteria that I use to show that addiction was taking place was that the addictive experience made you feel okay about yourself. It made you feel peaceful. It made you feel as though you could get through life. It made you feel as though you were a valued human being. So when that is true, the addiction becomes something more than some kind of functional means of getting feelings. It becomes the centerpiece of your existence. It becomes the thing around which all the rest of your life is organized. In other words, addiction to a specific things becomes your identity. And one reason people have difficulty sometimes overcoming addiction is because people aren't going to remove the center post of their life. In 1962, a great man named Charles Winnick, whom I got to meet personally eventually, wrote a classic article called Maturing Out of Addiction. And in New York City, he was able to check the roles, the public health roles of people known to be addicted to opioids. And he found out that the large majority of them matured out, was the term he used, from addiction in some period of 5, 10, 15 years after they initially became addicted, which tended to be in their late teens. Once again, we want to ask the question, what about the small percentage of people who didn't mature out? And Winnick had an extremely interesting quote there. The small minority of addicted individuals who did not mature out were the ones who saw themselves as giving in to the inevitable, which they considered their addictions to be. And then they expected that addiction to be a lifelong accompaniment of their life. Wow. And what would convince people who would ordinarily be able to outgrow an addiction, looking at their cohorts, that they were not able to outgrow it? What might you think would be the cause of that kind of pessimism? And the answer to that is what we teach people about addiction. What the 12 steps teaches people about addiction, and AA and NA, what Nora Volkow and the brain disease model of addiction teach people, what Gabor Mate and the trauma model of addiction teach people, that addiction, even what some people term as harm reduction, methadone treatment, a lot of which is based on the idea that a person has a metabolic disease that they can never escape, and therefore they can never escape using methadone as a tool, as a crutch in their lives. We are teaching people to remain addicted by our major methods of dealing with addiction. I just want to switch to another point of view. A woman named Meaghan Ralston, who used to work for DPA as a policy and harm reduction director. I haven't followed her career totally, but I believe she's now a part of a peer group counseling program. Meaghan used to have the moniker, still has the moniker, of overdose girl. So maybe that gives you a little bit of a sense of Meaghan's background before she became a productive worker in the addiction field. But unlike so many people that we may hear about who work in addiction, in the addiction field, who emphasize that they're in permanent recovery, but can never fully recover, that they are addicted in their identities, that they're lifelong addicts. Meaghan Ralston wrote a piece entitled, this was in Huffington Post in 2014, I'm breaking up with the word addict, and I hope you'll do the same. She wrote this: even in a chaotic stage of drug use, we are not other. We are women. We are someone's daughter. We continue to laugh. We continue to like jazz and cheeseburgers and comfy pajamas. We cry. We get so lonely. We hate sitting in traffic. Addiction can be wretched, no question, but we do not ever stop being human beings, even during the times in our lives when we are dependent on drugs, when we were, in her case, at our lowest moments, and when she might have died. Meaghan Ralston is telling us that the worst thing that can happen to you around your addiction is what Charles Winnick said, that you become indebted to the notion that you are an addict, that that's your basic identity, that will never change, no matter how much you change or try to change or acquire new friends or new ways of living. Meaghan Ralston could still think of herself as being in recovery today, but she doesn't. And that's the worst thing about our current approach to addiction. All of the main modalities of addiction, AA, trauma therapy, and the brain theory of addiction, have as their centerpieces the inevitability of your permanent addiction, that you can never extricate yourself from the addiction. And so I believe something that people find hard to believe that I believe. The reason addiction and drug deaths are escalating without restraint during our lifetimes is because we have done more and more to propagate these permanent disease identity notions of addiction. And that is the major cause of our drug and addiction crisis. Not the drugs themselves, which come and go, but the way that we respond to them, supposedly, when we are trying to help people escape from addiction. It's a sad situation, and if we don't recognize and reverse this, then we're going to inevitably see drug deaths continue to spiral out of control.